Hello, you're watching AnewZ Morning from Baku. I'm Bakhtiar Hasanov, and here are the top stories. Supporters celebrate Donald Trump's victory in U.S. presidential election. Germany faces snap election as Chancellor Olaf Scholz sacks finance minister. A new UN report says climate change has caused Caucasus glaciers to retreat 600 meters, shrinking freshwater supplies. Donald Trump's election to the White House for his second term has been celebrated by Republicans all over the United States.
It's been a fiercely contested election. Both sides ran expansive and expensive campaigns to garner widespread support from across the country. For Trump supporters, the win was a joyous moment.
I'm excited. I want to just rip this spike up and throw it in the air and celebrate. Everyone's so happy. He's going to make everyone happy again. Even if they didn't want him as president, they're going to be wealthier, safer, healthier, everything. So I'm ecstatic.
In his victory speech, Trump tasked Robert F. Kennedy Jr. with helping to make America healthy again.
Everything was in jeopardy, and President Trump is back again to make America great again and make America healthy again.
My brick suit is it's a metaphor. It's supposed to call to mind a wall, and in this case, it's a strong border wall, and that's what I believe America needs, is stronger border controls. President Trump will do that. He will get the border back in order. We will not have the influx of millions upon millions of illegal aliens per year into our country.
As he declared victory, Trump appeared to dial down the rhetoric on immigration, saying, "We want people to come in, but they have to come legally."
But not everyone was so pleased about the outcome of the election. Kamala Harris supporters are disappointed with her result.
I'm honestly very disappointed, but I saw this coming last year, especially when everything on Gaza happened, but even before, when Joe Biden announced that he was running again for president, I just saw there was the lack of enthusiasm. And as that continued on, even into the debate with Trump, I just saw a lot of people that have very progressive views kind of waning.
I'm going to go home frustrated and a little still confused, because I feel like I saw Kamala Harris come in our town and cause traffic jams every single week. Pittsburgh was the main place. They were 5 minutes from my house, and it's yeah, you got that area blue, but the rest of the country kind of just was faced with very unclear policies on foreign war from both sides, and I just think that neither have strong enough policies to lead this country in the right direction.
Donald Trump's win elicited a positive response from financial markets in the United States and created a more mixed impact in Europe and China.
The dollar soared, heading for its strongest one-day gain in more than 2 years, while US equity futures jumped nearly 2%. Cryptocurrency markets also reacted positively to the election news. Bitcoin briefly reached the $75,000 mark, reaching an all-time high in the process. The sharp rise is attributed to what's expected to be a more favourable stance by Donald Trump towards the crypto industry. Meanwhile, Eurozone stock futures rose sharply. However, fears of possible tariffs under a Trump presidency dealt a blow to the euro. Concerns over Trump's economic policies pushed the European currency down 1.7% to 1.074 US dollars. Chinese markets also fell on the news out of the US, with the blue chip CS1300 index dropping 0.5%. Analysts point to fears amongst Chinese investors regarding the prospect of heightened tensions between the US and China, remembering the trade conflict which started during Trump's last presidency in January 2018. At that time, the Trump administration imposed tariffs and trade barriers on China in an effort to change Beijing's trade policies.
With Donald Trump's return to the U.S. presidency, European and Middle Eastern leaders face a dramatically different political landscape. How will this affect conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East? And what might it mean for the economic ties with China? Branwell Maddox, director of the leading British think tank Chatham House, commented on the issues.
Trump's been a big supporter of Israel. He hasn't always got on with Netanyahu, and I'm not quite sure where that relationship will go, though I'm sure Netanyahu is pleased to see Trump rather than Harris heading for the White House. And of course, we'll still have Joe Biden to contend with for the next 2.5 months. Trump could make this better, or he could make it an awful lot worse. He could make it worse by siding with those in Netanyahu's cabinet who say, essentially, let's look to annex the West Bank, let's look to control Gaza, let's see if we can push the Palestinians out. We are not giving land to the Palestinians, and that is something that Netanyahu himself has said about not giving, creating a state for Palestinians. Trump could, though, be tempted, what to me is a more positive direction, of building on the Abraham Accords with the Emirates and other countries in his first term and saying, look, the big prize for the region and for Israel and for me is a deal with Saudi Arabia, the normalization of relations. Saudi wants an awful lot of things from that in its relations with the US, and offering really great prizes to Israel in terms of relations with other Arab countries, but also other Muslim countries like Indonesia, Malaysia. Keir Starmer and Ursula von der Leyen, head of the European Commission, were very quick to get their notes of congratulations out there to Donald Trump. And they're going to have to do a lot of hard thinking this morning. The UK wants to preserve its closeness of its relationship. Keir Starmer used that phrase, special relationship. But there are lots of points of difference with Trump, potentially, one being tariffs, which affects the whole of Europe, and one being Ukraine. And Ukraine also, President Zelensky got his congratulations out very quickly. But the big question is on Ukraine is, does Donald Trump intend to keep supplying Ukraine with weapons? And is he going to push for talks with Russia that freeze the conflict where it is at the moment, even if it's too grand a notion to talk about peace? I don't think Europe can do enough on its own, and I'm including in that the UK, to give Ukraine security and deter Russia either from continuing the conflict at this point or from coming back at some future point. I don't think Ukraine has real security without an American guarantee, either through NATO or a direct one-to-one guarantee from President Trump. The question is what Trump would want as part of that. Can he try to freeze the conflict pretty much where it is and say to Ukraine, look, I'll give you enough security that you can begin to rebuild your country, and I'll hold Russia at bay? But he said all kinds of very friendly things to President Putin. To my mind, that deal, if it was a deal, would be worth an awful lot more if China took part in it, really trying to weigh in on Russia's side, saying, look, we don't want this to restart, because deals with Putin have not got very far in the past.
Jason Epstein, president of South 5 Strategies, shared his insights on the atmosphere in the U.S. today, the potential for resolving the global conflicts, and the broader international implications of Trump's return to the White House.
Obviously, this is a momentous occasion, and that Donald Trump appears to have won a majority of the popular vote, not just a majority of the Electoral College, is for some Americans unexpected, but it signifies a mandate. It signifies that Americans spoke decisively, that they wish to return to a brighter economic outlook, and they would like to take steps to see peace break out in the world. When Trump was president, no new wars were started. There was a concerted effort to find solutions to problems that did not involve fighting, but that also, when necessary, President Trump was willing to use force, that he was not fooling around, that the U.S. would protect its interests and protect its allies. The Ukraine conflict has been a disaster. It's been a disaster for everyone. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of casualties, dead, men, women, children, soldiers, and civilians alike, infrastructure blown to smithereens. When President Trump was in office last, Vladimir Putin did not conquer 1 inch of Ukrainian territory. There would not have been a war if Trump had had his second term at that time. And the priority now is to find a way to stop the bloodletting. And it is important that Ukraine be able to not just survive, but to thrive. But there are certain realities on the ground that have to be acknowledged. And it's important, again, that the region be able to come back to a more normal position, because right now it is just an absolute chaotic mess, and this is just not sustainable. So it's likely that whether it happens on January 20th, the date of President Trump's inauguration, or whether it happens soon after, that a ceasefire is likely to take effect. It's no coincidence that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was the first foreign leader, at least it's been reported this way, that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was the first foreign leader to congratulate President Trump on his election victory. At the same time, President Trump has made it clear that he sides with Israel, and that he he insists that Israel be able to achieve a strategic victory. At the same time, he wants it done right away. He wants it done quickly. He realizes that the longer the conflict in and around Israel continues, whether it's in the north, vis-a-vis Hezbollah, Iran's patron up there, or Hamas is in Gaza, another Iranian patron, that this must be done decisively.
Newly elected U.S. President Donald Trump, who criticized the level of U.S. support for Ukraine, has pledged to bring an end to the conflict before taking office in January. According to the Ukrainian political analyst Volodymyr Fesenko, Trump is likely to push for swift talks to end the war.
Є певні ризики, пов'язані з Трампом, і це ризики пов'язані з 2 обставинами.
There are 2 main risks connected with Trump. The first is that Trump will initiate talks on ending the war. He wants a quick result, and there is a risk that certain concessions could be made to Russia. However, I don't think that Trump would agree to peace only on Russia's terms, as this would look like a defeat for the US, and his advisors, and even himself, understand this. Nevertheless, some concessions will be made. It is highly likely that Trump will close the door on Ukrainian membership of NATO, which would certainly provoke a negative reaction from Zelensky and from the Ukrainians. Then the Ukrainian side will most likely be insisting on the USA giving us stronger security guarantees. This would be something like Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and Israel have. Trump himself offered the idea, and the Republicans were supporting it, that the military aid to Ukraine was coming in the form of a loan or land lease. This would be a debt to Ukraine. Yes, we would have to pay later. Terms would be preferential, but it's still an additional burden and a problem for the future. This is not the worst-case scenario. It's better than the total absence of aid. However, it is highly likely that macro-financial assistance to Ukraine from the US will cease.
We also spoke to Russian political scientist and expert on U.S.-Russia politics, Dmitry Simes, who thinks that Russia has no illusions that Donald Trump is a friend of Moscow. According to him, there is some hope that he could help clinch a temporary ceasefire in Ukraine relatively swiftly.
I view the situation with the war of Ukraine differently than it is common in Washington and in London. I think that Russia was subjected to NATO creeping aggression for many years, which was threatening the very foundations of the Russian state. And Russia had every reason, and certainly every right, to respond using those resources which were available to Moscow. And I think it is basically being welcome in Moscow, which is not to say that Russia have done anything to promote such an outcome. And second, it is not to say that Russia is not aware of past experience and certainly does not expect that President Trump would start making unilateral concessions. It is understood that he has his own agenda. He is not a Russian friend. He is an American patriot, and it is not going to be easy. People in charge of the Russian government, including President Putin, that they basically would welcome any departure from that very unhappy period Russia had with the United States during the Obama and particularly the Biden administration. Actually, I have to say that it was not a very happy period when Trump was in office before. But any departure from that, creeping escalation against Russia, Russian responses to this escalation, I think, obviously, should be welcome in Moscow. The Russian political elite, who was extremely sympathetic for the United States, absurdly often sympathetic to the United States for many years, they were gradually coming to a conclusion that their love was rejected, that their concerns were neglected, that their appeals were not listened to, and that the only language which the United States would understand.
Head of the Political Science and International Relations Department at the Turkish-German University, Enes Bayrakli, shared his views how the U.S. election results could reshape American foreign policy, especially in relation to Turkey and the South Caucasus.
First of all, I think many were, of course, surprised, but I wasn't surprised because I think Trump is the result of a trend in the Western politics, which we witness not only in the United States but also in Europe, that we see that the rise of far-right parties, populist parties, and this is a trend that we witnessed in the last decade in the Western politics. So to say, the zeitgeist actually encourages leaders like or supports leaders like Trump. And we see Trump-like leaders are winning elections all around Europe also. When it comes to Trump's policies in the Middle East or in Ukraine, or also his policies towards Turkey or Azerbaijan, we can say that Trump will make some changes that will affect everybody. So those countries are quite, let's say, concerned what will happen. Trump will create some opportunities, but he will also create some risks for those countries, especially when I talk about I can talk about Turkey, because we witnessed with our relations with Trump during his first term, he has acted in accordance with Turkish interests, but also he has also substantially done things that has harmed Turkey. So it will be a more dynamic relationship. He will unsettle many actors, but he won't be like Kamala Harris or Biden administration. He will probably take some dramatic decisions, like in Ukraine war, that he wants to end this war, or in the Middle East, when it comes to Middle East. So everybody, all the actors around the world, they are following this quite closely. He's also somehow unpredictable. This we should also understand. So Trump is a leader that is really difficult to predict what he is going to do. But what is for sure is that his presidency will be a more dynamic presidency. He has signaled that he doesn't want to start wars. He wants to end wars. But he will be very active in foreign policy because this is one of the main areas that he wants to show that he is different than the Biden administration. And he wants to prove that he is ending wars. So he will push for political settlement in Ukraine. He will push for political settlement or at least a ceasefire in the Middle East. That's what I can say.
The analyst also commented on wider impact of cooperation between Turkic states after Bishkek summit.
The last summit of Turkic states is another example of deepening integration between Turkic states. We have been witnessing different integration efforts and cooperation efforts between the Turkic countries. Yet in the last decade or so, we see that these ties are deepening now. And we have a new, let's say, framework for this. And the Turkic states now are regularly meeting and discussing their problems. Of course, this is related to also geopolitical developments. We are now entering a new world order, a multipolar world order. And of course, this is opening up new areas for cooperation for different actors. And I think Turkic states also, they want to seize this opportunity to deepen their ties and integration and cooperation. And that will benefit everybody. So there are huge areas of that these states can cooperate. And I think we will see a more concrete examples of this cooperation between these actors.
Kazakh political analyst Nurbolat Nishembayev explains how the U.S. election results could reshape American foreign policy, especially in relation to Central Asia.
Today's American election result is shaping our understanding about the global politics. Definitely, the re-election of the Trump presidency will impact to the American and the Central Asian relations. In the last 5 years, during the Joe Biden administration, we have seen some form of some passive relations between the United States and Central Asia. But re-election of the Trump will be a kind of reactive step towards the Central Asia. In particular, since American troops left Afghanistan in 2021, United States policy towards Central Asia is changed in form of structurally. So therefore, re-election of the Trump in this time will identify American foreign policy towards Central Asia up next coming 5 years. So if we come to this Kazakhstan case, Kazakhstan has created, let's say, invented in the last 15 years, C5+1 model. Kazakhstan and the American relations will improve within the format of C5+1 with the United States. Here, I would like to mention two more factors. Not only Kazakhstan, most of the Central Asian countries in the last couple of decades, they have been improving multi-vector foreign policy. It's a structurally multi-vector foreign policy. It means having balanced foreign policy. Therefore, whatever who comes power in the United States will not change dramatically Central Asian and American relations in the long term. That's very important. We have to be frank, in the last 5 years during the Biden administration, American foreign policy towards Central Asia has been passive, quite passive. But however, Trump's return to the White House will reactivate this policy. But there will be in 3-dimension differences in the Trump administration foreign policy towards the Central Asia. One of them will be based on the trade and economic relations. In particular, I think Trump administration will pay attention in Central Asia within the scope of trade routes, and economic projects. Therefore, there is a higher possibility creating a common trade tariffs and some regulations between Central Asia and the United States. The second aspect, as the Trump office will be reconsider the policy with the United States and Russia. The tension between the United States and Russia will be probably stabilized. It will be even better for Central Asian states to create a softer balance between the United States and Russia in the upcoming 5 years. There are one more aspect I would like to bring to your point, that's the role of the China. In the last 5 years, during the Biden administration, the role of the China in Central Asia has been under considered. But however, during the Trump office, I think the role of the China will be even more important in terms of Central Asia and the United States, Central Asia and American relations. C5+1 format, it's invented in 2005 by Kazakhstan toward Japan. First, it was introduced by Japan. Now it has been established such a kind of solid diplomatic structure on behalf of Central Asian state towards the external actors. Regarding the United States, we have seen successful cases during the Trump administration, 2016 and 2020, also during the Biden administration, we have seen kind of fruitful cooperation and the progress within the scope of C5+1. That's very important to reconsider how the format will be effective in the upcoming 5 years and what Trump office will see within the format of the C5+1. Because there are two more reasons. The first of all, Trump is more likely pragmatic politician. He will consider the realpolitik in global politics. Therefore, for Trump, I think to have face-to-face relations with each politicians in Central Asia is better than having common established institutional factor in the form of C5+1. But however, for Central Asia, the format C5+1 is proving its effectiveness in the last 10 years. We have seen in Central Asia in the last 10 years power transition. Most of the leaders changed in the last 10 years. They have created common vision towards Central Asia, also acting as a unique region in terms of political integrity in global politics. Therefore, my vision during the Trump administration on the relations between the USA and Central Asia will be even more effective within the platform C5+1.
Germany's ruling coalition government collapsed as Chancellor Olaf Scholz dismissed Finance Minister Christian Lindner, triggering political upheaval in Europe's largest economy. The move sets the stage for a snap election and comes just hours after Donald Trump secured a victory in the U.S. presidential race.
Scholz, leader of the Social Democrats, announced that he would continue governing with a minority administration, relying on his own party and the Greens, Germany's second-largest political force. However, passing legislation will require securing support from other parliamentary factions. The collapse follows months of tension over budget policies, with Lindner's Free Democrats clashing with Scholz's coalition. Scholz accused Lindner of obstructing budget measures and putting party interests above national needs.
Too many times did Finance Minister Lindner block laws irrelevantly. Too many times did he act to serve his clientele and party. Too many times did he break my trust. Even the agreement on the budget was withdrawn by him after we had agreed it during long negotiations. There is no basis of trust for further cooperation.
However, Lindner rejected the accusations.
Unfortunately, Olaf Scholz has shown he does not have the strength to give his country a new boost. Instead, this afternoon, the Chancellor gave me an ultimatum to suspend the constitutional debt brake. I could not do that because I would have been breaking my oath of office. His carefully prepared statement from tonight proves that Olaf Scholz was no longer aiming for an agreement, sustainable for everyone, but rather a calculated break of this coalition.
With rising public dissatisfaction and far-right and far-left parties gaining support, Scholz is set to face a parliamentary confidence vote on January 15th. The collapse has sparked concerns about political instability, especially as Germany and Europe navigate key challenges, including the fallout from Trump's election, the ongoing war in Ukraine, and NATO's future.
Cuba is experiencing a nationwide power outage as Hurricane Rafael hits the island, plunging 10 million people into darkness.
As Hurricane Rafael made landfall, the authorities evacuated at least 70,000 people, while as a powerful Category 3 storm wreaked havoc across the island. With winds reaching 185 kilometers per hour, the storm is causing widespread disruption, knocking out power lines and crippling essential services like water and communications. The Cuban National Energy Company confirmed that the intense winds resulted in the collapse of the electricity system. Schools and public transport were suspended and flights were cancelled until Thursday. The incident follows a recent 4-day blackout triggered by Cuba's struggling energy infrastructure and comes as Hurricane Oscar, which claimed at least 6 lives, adds to this crisis.
Azerbaijan and Kyrgyzstan have strengthened their educational cooperation. There are 2 Azerbaijani schools in Bishkek, ranking amongst the biggest in the capital.
The Heydar Aliyev Educational Complex was officially opened in Bishkek in 2022. More than 500 students study in 2 shifts in the 3-story school building. The school itself is a representation of strong cooperative ties between the 2 countries. As the initiative by the president of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, a STEM center has been established in 6 classrooms. Its aim was to foster students' scientific and technical creativity.
On the basis of our school, several offices dedicated to Heydar Aliyev were opened. We have the Office of Friendship between Azerbaijan and Kyrgyzstan. We have a STEM center on the basis of which our guys can master new technologies and work in new directions that we are now dictated by time. We are happy with cooperation. We hope that cooperation between our countries will continue.
Officially opened in the same year, the Nizami Ganjavi School is also located in Bishkek. The school facility comprises 30 classrooms, a reading room, a library, computer labs, and specialized rooms for biology.
Azerbaijan's pavilion at the World Urban Forum in Cairo is focusing on sustainable urban development. The forum brings together global leaders to discuss the future of cities.
The 13th World Urban Forum is one of the largest platforms for tackling global urbanization challenges. This year, Azerbaijan is showcasing its sustainable urban development concepts. The country is focusing on innovative solutions for smart cities, climate action and urban forms, particularly related to the liberated territories of Azerbaijan.
And this is a very important point, not only for Azerbaijan, but for the entire world. And Azerbaijan is currently going through the very big transformation too. We know that within the Great Return State program, there are thousands of people getting back to the liberated territories of Azerbaijan in Karabakh and Eastern Zangezur. And therefore building the cities and villages from scratch is a very big essence, and making them comfortable living for the people, for the inhabitants which are returning there, is a very essential task.
Azerbaijan's participation in the World Urban Forum in Cairo is a prelude to Baku hosting the next edition in 2026. This year's discussions set the stage for further collaboration especially with COP29 in Baku starting in 1 week's time.
The disruptive impact of climate change is concerning for more than 50% of people, according to a recent UN poll, and leaders from all areas are being called upon to act. It means the COP29 conference beginning in Baku in a matter of days is more important than ever.
Humanity is facing numerous threats, both from man-made and natural disasters. Religious delegates are hoping to play a crucial role in resolving both, and the issue of climate change in particular was on the agenda on the second day of the Global Summit of Religious Leaders in Baku.
When discussing climate and ecological impacts, it's related to survival. Essentially, we need to deeply understand how our actions affect the environment and the world as a whole. Once we grasp this, we can develop a true connection to nature. This, in turn, could enable humanity to live longer and healthier lives. The wisdom provided by religion is important. It offers valuable guidance on how to live in harmony with the earth, helping to ensure a better future for all.
According to religious leaders at the event, COP29 should not only be focused on climate change, but also ending chaos, conflict and war.
Religion teaches love of nature. Because if I give you example from Quran, if you read through the chapters names in Quran, you will find a lot of chapter names, more than 30. Those are named with reference to the nature.
It's hoped the three-day religious summit will be a valuable springboard in the run-up to COP29.
Turkey is gearing up for the United Nations COP29 summit in Azerbaijan, bringing a high-level delegation led by President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. From November 11th to the 22nd, global leaders, including Turkey's top governmental officials and environmental experts, will convene to discuss critical climate action and the latest efforts being made to combat global warming.
Turkey's ambassador to Azerbaijan, Cahit Baja, highlighted Turkey's position as a leading contributor in green energy production, with over 55% of its electricity now sourced from renewable energy. He noted Turkey's advancements in waste-to-energy projects, positioning COP29 as a platform to share these achievements and collaborate on innovative climate solutions.
At COP29, Turkey will highlight its Zero Waste initiative, led by First Lady Emine Erdoğan alongside Azerbaijan's First Lady Mehriban Aliyeva. The two nations will present a joint pavilion, the Solidarity Center, focusing on waste management, recycling and eco-friendly practices. Turkey's Ministry of Environment and Climate Change will also have a pavilion featuring numerous Turkish organizations, from energy to academia.
Ambassador Baja mentioned that Turkey will be represented by a large delegation, including public institutions, municipalities and non-governmental organizations, to contribute to panels and presentations.
A new report from the United Nations Environment Programme reveals that climate change is severely affecting the Caucasus region, with glacier retreat and shrinking freshwater supplies, threatening communities across Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, and parts of Iran, Russia, and Turkey.
Released ahead of the United Nations COP29 climate summit, the report outlines alarming environmental changes and calls for urgent, collaborative solutions to mitigate their impacts. According to the Second Caucasus Environment Outlook, glaciers in the region have receded by an average of 600 meters over the past century. Since 2000, more than 11 billion tons of fresh water previously stored in ice have been lost. The decline in glacier and snow cover is already affecting river flows, a key water source for millions, with projections indicating further reductions in available fresh water. River flows across most Caucasus countries are expected to decrease by up to 20% by 2100.
The report warns that average regional temperatures could rise by as much as 3.6 Celsius by the century's end, with mountainous areas seeing the most rapid warming. This intensifying heat is expected to speed up glacier melt, increase flood risks, and further reduce water resources. To address these challenges, the report recommends integrating climate adaptation into regional policies, prioritizing environmental considerations in urban planning, and developing transboundary water management plans.
According to the World Meteorological Organization, greenhouse gas levels have reached a high record. Last summer was officially the hottest on record. This pushes us dangerously close to surpassing the limits set in Paris Agreement, with scientists urging for immediate action.
A slow yet noticeable change. Record-setting summer temperatures have been observed, with August being the third month in a row, according to the European Union. Experts say the target of keeping long-term global warming within 1.5 degrees Celsius is moving out of reach. Last month, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres issued a warning to the world governments concerning the dangers of not slashing emissions.
The message of today's emissions gap report is clear. We are teetering on a planetary tightrope. Either leaders bridge the emissions gap, or we plunge headlong into climate disaster, with the poorest and most vulnerable suffering the most.
Record-setting figures were also noted in ocean temperatures, with a first-ever breach of 1.5 degrees Celsius in the Northern Hemisphere back in June. Nearly half the world's population is considered vulnerable to the changes in the climate. Just last month, Central Europe experienced disastrous floods, which analysts believe were worsened by the climate change. The result, the loss of many lives and billions of euros worth of damage. With the climate conference set to kick off in Azerbaijan, governments will be expected to showcase their plans on just how much emissions they are willing to cut.
Well, that's all we have for this hour. Please do stay with us. And from all of us here in Baku, we wish you a pleasant day ahead.